Welcome Wargamers, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and today I want to answer a question for you. Would you love Port Royal? This is the newest game to come out of Firelock Games, located here in the United States. They had a incredibly successful Kickstarter, and for Kickstarter supporters, we got our copy early, and this will actually be going on sale on, I believe, March 3rd from Firelock Games. And if you have been to Adepticon the last few years, you would have picked up at the Firelock Games booth, they actually have like a whole L-shaped section of tables, is always the most hoppin' place at the convention. You got people dressed up in pirates, the excitement between customers and the retailers and the game designers, it's all there, you can feel it. People are stoked for their game, which is why I think Port Royal just absolutely crushed it. And so rather than being a very detailed video about the minutia of the game and the gameplay and stuff, this is going to be simply answering the question, would you like Port Royal? I'm going to talk about all the coolest features in it, things I learned during playtesting, and just answer that question for you. Either way, there is a non-affiliate link to Firelock Games down below where you can pre-order it. Go support these guys because they are a fantastic company full of wonderful people. So from a high level, Port Royal is set during the Golden Age of Piracy, specifically the city of Port Royal, Jamaica, after the devastating earthquake that went on there in 1692. An earthquake so devastating that the ground liquefaction is what it's called, and whole buildings started to kind of sink. This was a time marked by buccaneering, war, piracy, valiant heroes, and terrible villains, which are often all the same person depending on your viewpoint. The city was in ruins, there was glory and coin to be pilfered from its sinking depths. Now, while this game does have a historical setting, I don't think of it as a historical game like I think of other historical games. Simply because of the chaotic nature of what happened in real life at Port Royal, there's no real boundaries on the lore that you can craft. You can tell so many more stories compared to other historical games. And what I mean is, you could just be a band of pirates who saw an opportunity. You could be a loyal soldier to your empire, whatever that might be, if it's the Spanish Guardacosta or the English, something like that. Basically trying to guard your storehouse. There's just weird interactions of factions grabbing groups of guys and saying, we're going to go get that, we're going to go defend that. And all of those things go into making a huge sandbox that you and your opponent can play. And it allows you to engage with the rules in a way that really doesn't limit the spectrum of responses that people actually had during the destruction of Port Royal. And the slow pace of technological progress mixed with, how long it takes for things from the home countries of some of these places to reach Port Royal, there's just a whole lot of, nuance and vagaries, so you can really kind of craft whatever story you want. You can command a ton of different kinds of companies, company being the word you use for your warband or your army. Just from the core book here, we have the Jamaican Pirates, French Buccaneers, Spanish Guardacosta, Caribbean Raiders, Maroons, Forces of the Crown, and the Dutch Capers. I think the army and model variety, as well as the different types of terrain and ways of interacting with it, are what make people stop the most at Adepticon. It's just stunning. Now, I call them various factions. Really, they're just minor bonuses, and they kind of dictate how much equipment you have or something like that. It's just very minor effects, but it's really cool that they have a lot of storytelling background mechanic diversity. Now, the core mechanics of the game are simple. They're very easy to learn, and there's a lot of fun to be had with some of the more nuanced sides of things. And the actual booklet you get with this, only about 29 of those pages, including some that are just full pictures, are the rules. Meaning this is a very accessible game. You can introduce this to your group, and it is very light to learn, and people will start playing and rolling dice on their own very quickly. I think by the end of turn 2, it became very responsive, I just knew what to do all the time. In addition to that, if you do want to learn the rules a little bit more, there is kind of an advanced back section where it introduces the idea of playing a solo or cooperative game. So in this scenario, it could be you teaching another person via being their opponent, or you could both take the same side. You take a few guys, I'll take a few guys, and we'll just work together against the computer, so to speak, which is my favorite way of introducing games. I've said that a few times when I'm talking about Fallout Wasteland Warfare. It's the penultimate way of working together, but also via education, because at that point you're essentially the GM kind of walking us through this game. Now, this isn't going to be a detailed breakdown of the rules, but just some highlights that I think stand out. One, it's played on a 2x2, meaning it fits in any house, which is awesome. 2x2 is my favorite game board size. If you can get a war game to work well on that size, Doug wants it. Your warband is going to be, I think, like 5 to 12-ish guys. That's on the very high end, by the way. You'll choose the fighter, give them some basic equipment like a little sword or a musket, something like that. There are also a bunch of pre-made warbands if you're just somebody who wants to pick something up and start playing. You get all the terrain you need in the box set, which we'll talk about here in a second. And the core game mechanic, right, just to really wrap your head around this, is essentially rolling up to 3 d10 dice and then checking the number you rolled against the skill value that it's comparing to. So if you have a skill value of 4, you're trying to roll equal to or higher than 4 for whatever it is. If it's an attack, a 4 or higher is a successful hit. If it's defending, a 4 or higher is a successful defense, and so on. I actually have a battle report that I did here on my channel. I'll link it in the description down below, showing off this system. The first turn, I walk through everything kind of out loud with people, and then from there I kind of speed up and just play through. So go check that out if you want to see the mechanic. There are some skills, abilities, terrain, that kind of stuff that can modify that number. Like if somebody's hiding behind something, you know, your target number gets a little bit more difficult. But there's really, you're not doing mental calculations here. It's like maybe a +1 or a +2, nothing dramatic. And the core of the game is that you and your opponent pick a mission. There's a lot of different kinds of missions, things that are symmetrical, asymmetrical, where you get to put objective markers, you know, at your choice all over the board. And then when the game starts, it breaks into an active player and a reactive player. If you are the active player, you pick a model and they get to do 2 actions. Pretty simple for a skirmish wargame. The thing is though, for every action that you do as the active player, the reactive player, once you're done, has a chance to react, which is essentially just a free action. There's some limitations, like you can't reload a gun with a reaction, but fundamentally, it makes it so the game is constantly going player to player, even though one of you is more of the aggressor. You're initiating things by choosing the actions, but your opponent, as long as any model can see the guy who's acting, has a chance to react. Now that sounds kind of strange for war games, because normally it's, no, I pick my guy, they do their 2 actions, and then we alternate to you. But in doing so, by having the constant action and reaction dynamic going on, I can't stress this enough or even put it into words right. It feels like you're both playing at the same time all the time. There's no one just sitting there slurping a Dr. Pepper while the other guy, you know, takes an hour for his turn. I like it more than the action and reaction system in, say, Infinity. It's a lot cleaner, and it leads to some cool moments because you as the active player have to choose your actions knowing that your opponent could be rushing towards you during those actions. Like if you choose to reload and then shoot, well, you've given your opponent at least 2 chances to run forward. So it makes the gameplay hyper aggressive. You're constantly moving. You're always looking at where the models are and who can see who, not in like a technical gotcha kind of way, but just exploring the board that you created. It makes it an exceptionally dynamic. The more terrain you add, the more fun I think it gets, because at that point, if you add things like elevation, right, someone is up high so they can see a lot of people and a lot of people can see them, that creates different dynamics than someone who's trying to go around the back side of the board and stay low. And all of that's kind of, I guess, kind of balanced by the fact that some of the more strong weapons you have to be the active player to fire them or reload them, that kind of stuff. There is a balancing act to it, but what it incentivizes you is to have a variety of equipment on your soldiers, because you don't know if they're going to get charged really quickly or in combat. You have to be prepared. Now, one of the things I did mention, you know, kind of on top of this very simplified game system, is this idea of an AI, right? You can play against basically a deck of cards is what it comes down to. Port Royal actually has their own like actual bicycle card deck of cards, and those come with the instructions for the AI like pre-written on them, which is really nice. You can play with a standard deck. It tells you how to do the math on breaking down the cards. I like this quite a bit. That's why I grabbed it on the Kickstarter thing. But essentially you will activate, and then you'll flip the card to see what the AI does. And it's going to always choose the nearest enemy for doing like reactions and stuff like that. But you don't know what it's going to choose, and it chooses different things based on the score of the game. If your score is high, the AI is going to be way more aggressive. If the AI is high on scores, it's going to try and defend to keep what it has. So in terms of like being responsive to the game, but also simple enough to be very straightforward, I like where it sits. I think other games kind of lean too hard in one direction, making it too simple so that they're not really a challenge. You can kind of game the computer, if you will. And the other side being it's too minutia driven. Now that's kind of a very basic overview. Like I said, I talked about all of this stuff when it comes to gameplay in my narrative battle report that I did. I have details to that down in the description below. The one thing I want to talk about here in closing out this video is the actual value of this box. Now, when you see an order on Kickstarter, right, they had the contents of the box kind of pictured, but it's different when it all comes together. Port Royal is $100. This box right here, it comes with enough stuff for 2 warbands. There's 3 kind of like unique models that are used for missions. So like escorting the governor, and there's like a little monk guy you have to get off the board, that kind of stuff. It's fun little things. There's also 26 pieces of terrain, including the objective markers and everything, the booklet, as well as just a whole bunch of like tokens and that kind of thing. For $100, okay, when you compare this to other, we'll say skirmish level games, you have stuff like Warcry, which can't produce a box set that has terrain without sneezing $140. All the way to the other end of games where you get like half a warband and you're not quite able to fully play the game. This allows you to jump in with both the actual, you versus an opponent, and all the material you need to play a co-op and solo games. I think the deck of cards they have specially printed is like $25 or something like that. I like it because I do a lot of the AI type games. If it's not a value to you, then skip it. Still, all that does is make the value of this better because you're not paying for stuff you don't need. You also get a fun bunch of models where it's just dead guys just all over the place, so you can kind of decorate your table a little bit more. And that's it. For $100, it is a highly, convenient. Meaning you can dismantle the stuff, put it all back in this box, and it'll just sit there on your shelf just fine. Or for $100, it's the best way to sample a war game ever. If you did want to expand from this set, like say get a second unit of troops or something like that, Firelock Games minis are only like $30 for like 12 guys. Like it's hyper affordable. They're historical miniatures, so they're kind of based off some very specific stuff, but there's a lot of variety to their model kits. I like them quite a bit. I played in the Blood and Plunder event last year and had a stellar time. I'm going to be building up my Port Royal set. I have a ton of the soldiers and stuff already built and painted, so I might just hold on to those for right now until I decide on a specific build I want for these. But I'm going to build like a little monk. There's 2 captain guys and all the little terrain objectives and stuff. It's a fun little set, so I'm going to be building this stuff up, and you'll be seeing more battle reports and content here on the channel. If there's any questions you have regarding like how to build a company, how to use the AI, that kind of stuff, please leave them in the comments down below. It helps me decide like what kind of content people are looking for. But the simple part of it is, like when I started this whole video, why should you try Port Royal? It is light, it is convenient, it is hyper affordable, and it is very engaging. Like it's not just simple like rock, paper, scissors simple. There's a lot of thought into how you move your troops. It's very entertaining. It's very active, which I like in terms of the active and reactive players kind of a thing. It's just an immense amount of. It harkens back to classic war games, things like Mordheim, the older version of Necromunda a little bit, and create cinematic gameplay that is a lot of fun for gaming groups. That's why I think you should try Port Royal. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today and giving me a listen. Check out Port Royal. Coming up on 3/3 is when it starts shipping. It's already on pre-order right now, so go check that out in the description below. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming, friend.